In this video, we are going to talk about APIs. So what are APIs? Well, the APIs are ready-made sets of code building blocks that allow a developer to implement programs that would otherwise be hard or impossible to implement. So what does that mean? Well, let's take an example. Well, APIs do the same thing for programming that a ready-made furniture kits would do for home building. So think about it, that if you had to go ahead and create a bookshelf, and if you had to work out the design yourself, that would be harder compared to if you have a ready-made cut panels and all you have to do is just screw them together. So the functionality built on top of the client-side JavaScript language called the API, which is Application Programming Interface, provide you with extra superpowers to use in your JavaScript code. Now, the different types of APIs. Well, the first is the third-party APIs. So third-party APIs are the ones that are not built into the browser. Okay. For example, let's say Twitter API. So Twitter API allows you to do things like displaying your latest tweets on your website. You also have Google Maps API and OpenStreetMap API, which allow you to embed custom maps into your website and other such functionalities. You have browser APIs. So browser APIs are built into your web browser and are able to expose data from surrounding computer environments or do useful complex things. For example, you have your DOM API. This is one of the most important APIs that we will be discussing in detail in a moment. But just to let you know, DOM stands for Document Object Model. It is an API that allows you to manipulate your HTML and CSS, like creating, removing, and changing HTML dynamically and applying new styles to your web pages. And we interact with the DOM elements with JavaScript all the time. Okay. Then you have the geolocation API, which retrieves the geographical information, and this is how the Google Maps is able to find your location and plot it on a map. Canvas and WebGL APIs allow you to create animated 2D and 3D graphics, and you also have the awesome audio and video APIs like HTML Media Element and WebRTC. Their job is to do really interesting things with multimedia, such as play audio and video right in the web page, or grab the video from your web camera and display it on someone else's computer. And you might have seen this already. So DOM API. So Document Object Model. So DOM API is an API that represents a document with a logical tree, and it's basically the layer between the source code and what we see in the browser itself. As we discussed, D stands for document in form of which is in form of HTML file or web page when displayed. Object, you can say that every document element, example in HTML, you have your head tag, body tag, paragraph, heading. All of these are objects. So it treats everything as an object. And you have models, which means that it describes how these objects are represented in a tree fashion. So there is something called node. So the document consists of a hierarchical tree of nodes. I'm going to explain that to you in a moment. But before that, just want to share with you that DOM connects the web pages to scripts and programming languages by representing the structure of the document like HTML representing a web page in memory, and is used to interact with web pages to add, delete, or change the structure and style of the content of the document. So HTML describes the structure of the page, but for browser, the HTML is only a piece of text document. It doesn't understand it by default. To make any sense of the HTML, the browser has to convert it into some form that they can understand, and this is the form that is called DOM. Now, in order for the browser to convert it from one format to another, it has a small piece of code which is called the parser. So it takes the HTML code, it uses the HTML parser, and then starts plotting your DOM tree. Okay, so it converts your document into a tree of objects, which is your DOM tree. As you can see that these are the elements that are created, and each of these elements are objects. Okay. Now each HTML tag is represented by a node of a tree called a DOM node. So as you can see, you have your parent element, which is a root element. Then you have a children, which is head tag. It is another element, again an object as well. And this is the parent of head. Similarly, you have title element, which is another node. So each of these are nodes, okay? And this head is the parent of title. So the title tag, including the closing, ending, and the content inside of it, is one node, and you can say it's the element node. Okay, and the text inside of it, let's say you have page title as text inside of it, that will be your text node. Okay, so there will be two types of node, element node and text node. So you can see this is the element node and this is the text node. Okay, so the document consists of the hierarchical tree of nodes, and a node is a fundamental record representing a single object within the document. So everything that we can change in the document are nodes. Elements and text nodes are two separate nodes in DOM. Now, there are two types of parsers. One is the HTML parser, which we just discussed about. Now, there's also one called CSS parser. So when you have CSS, then browser uses CSS parser to convert CSS into CSS OM. So like you have DOM, which is document object model, you also have CSS OM, which is CSS object model. Okay, so CSS converted is parsed and converted into CSS OM. Okay. Now, an important thing to note that unlike DOM, it cannot be built incrementally. The reason for this is because CSS rules can override each other. The browser engine has to do complex calculations to figure out how the CSS code applies to the DOM. Also, CSS doesn't block the DOM construction, but it does block the rendering of it, which means when the parsing happens, and if you have styles, it is not going to stop the browser to construct the nodes, and convert it into a tree of objects. But it will stop, which means the CSS will continue to be converted into CSS OM. However, what it will stop is the rendering of it. The browser won't display anything until it has both the DOM and the CSS OM, because it doesn't make any sense. The pages without CSS are often unusable. So JavaScript can interact with each of these nodes, each of these elements, and if it has to perform any changes like update the element in the DOM or change it or delete it or add it, it can do that. Okay, so DOM acts as an interface for connecting to JavaScript as well. Okay, also JavaScript can actually request for any of the style attributes as well if an element has a particular style attached to it. So it can also ask for that information as well. So if I had to sum it up, the browser takes the HTML document sent from the server, converts it into the DOM, which is tree of object. If there's any CSS, it converts into CSS OM, and if it has got any JavaScript or any other language we would have written, interacts with the DOM as an API for the HTML. Okay, now let's talk about including your scripts. In the previous episodes, you have learned how to include your JavaScript file. You could either include your JavaScript file like this, or you could have just written the script like this and just put all of your JavaScript code over here, whatever you want to write. Okay. Now, this is by default. So this way that you see over here of using the script tag is the default way of doing it. There's also something called script. So there is also something, there are two types of attributes that are available. One is the async and another one is defer. And this is what we're going to talk about, that what's the difference between if we don't use these two attributes, which means just keep it the default without any attributes, async or defer, and what will it be like if we use these attributes? What difference would it make? Okay, so let me explain that to you. I would want to explain the color codes to you. So the green means that HTML is parsing. Gray means that the HTML parsing is paused. The violet means that the script is downloading or downloaded. And the pink one means script executes, JavaScript executes. Okay, so this one, the first one, in the entire section that you see over here, this is the default way of doing it, like explained to you, just the script without any such attributes. Then you have async, which is this one, and then you have defer. Of course, just imagine that you had other files as well, like file1.js and file2.js. Now, what would happen? So let's say the browser goes ahead and gets this document, this piece of document. Now it's going to start parsing from the top, and then if it reaches a script, let's say this one, okay, so what will happen? So it is parsing, it is constructing your DOM tree as we just discussed, which is this basically. So just to explain to you that the browser builds up the DOM bit by bit. So as soon as the first chunks of code available and come in, it starts parsing the HTML and adding nodes to the tree. So if I had to show you an example, so let's see some of the HTML code starts parsing, start producing the DOM nodes. Some more HTML comes in, again it's going to create more nodes. So it starts constructing the DOM tree as soon as the codes come in bit by bit. However, in CSS that doesn't happen, like explained to you earlier. Okay, so coming back. So let's say it starts passing and converting into a DOM tree, and let's say that you had some other HTML elements available over here. Okay, so if its scripts reaches over here, what would happen? That the parsing would stop, not stop, I would say, but pause. Okay, and because it's encountered a script, it's going to go ahead and start downloading that script. So whatever's inside of this JavaScript file, it's going to start downloading that, and then finally once this file is downloaded, then it's going to execute that. And until this entire period, while it's being downloaded and executed, the entire parsing would be paused, right? And only once this script has been executed, the parsing would continue. Now, I wouldn't call it it's the best way of doing it, because think about it. If you have an element, let's say p element with a class of my element, for example, and if in this JavaScript file, if you're trying to access this element, it won't be available, right? So your JavaScript code would fail because it's not able to access the document. So the best way to deal with this is to keep your JavaScript file instead of here just before the body tag ends, so that when the entire HTML is been passed, DOM is constructed, when you try to access this element, it will be available here. Let's take another example. So let's say if you pass async, what happens then? Well, if you are going to use async, it means that it doesn't care when the script will be available. So let's have a look. Let's say your script reaches this point. The parsing is continuing, and then even if the script is encountered, you can see the parsing still continues. It is not stopping, right? Once the script is downloaded, only then the parsing would stop, and then the script will be executed. So while the script is being executed, only during that time it's going to be paused. Again, that doesn't solve our purpose. So for example, if you were trying to access another element 2, for example, in this script, again it won't be available, because you can see that although the parsing hasn't stopped over here, but that element won't be available, right? So not the best way, but I would say that asynchronous is best of both worlds. HTML parsing may continue and the script will be executed as soon as it's ready, but I would recommend this for scripts such as Google Analytics, but not for, like, when you are going to probably access one of the elements that aren't available. And again, it'll be best if you included that down at the bottom. That would be the best. Okay, if you did that, then you know that it's not going to stop the parsing while it's being downloaded. The script is being downloaded. Last one is the defer. Now, defer would mean simply delaying the script execution until the entire HTML parsing has finished. So if you have a look, if you have differ, what happens? So it starts parsing the HTML document, start constructing the tree. If it encounters the script, which is right here, okay, then the parsing doesn't actually stop. So as you can see that the parsing hasn't stopped and it continues on and on and on. And only once the entire HTML page is loaded, only then the script is executed. Okay, so that way differ is going to do the job for us. Okay, so even if you include the script here and not down at the bottom, when you have the differ attribute, it solves our purpose because we know that this script won't be executed and until the entire DOM, and also it won't hamper our HTML DOM tree construction, so the parsing will continue to happen. But the only problem with this is that a lot of browsers don't support differ yet, so I wouldn't suggest that you should rely on it. Okay, so what's the best way? Well, the best way is that it's better to put your script down at the bottom. Okay, and like I said, differ is not supported everywhere. Let's just get rid of it, but just to let you know that it exists and that's what it means. So it's always best practice to use your in fact include your scripts just before the body tag ends, so your entire script is available. And also in some cases, like when you are including Google Analytics, then probably you can use the async attribute as well. Awesome. So I hope that is clear. If it isn't, you can leave some comments and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay. So what are the uses of DOM? Just to recap, DOM connects the web pages to scripts or programming languages. It is used to interact with web pages, to add, delete, or change the structure or style of the content of the document. We're going to talk about the DOM properties. So let's just check the DOM. Okay, so if you print document, you can see that you've got the entire DOM available, the head tag. Inside of head you have got all of this available. You've got the body, all of that information. If you check the type of document, you can see it's an object, right? Okay, great. So the document has got different properties available. For example, you can get the URL of the page. If you hit it, you can see that you've got the entire URL, which is the same URL here. You can get location. So location would actually give you the URL of the page broken down in form of an array. So you can see that you've got in form of an object, actually not array. Okay, so you can see that you've got the href, you've got host name, host, origin, all of that information, right? So you can get that from the location. And then you have got the option to get the title of the page as well, so you can check title, and there you go, you've got the title. If you want to verify that, hit it. You can see that the title, where is it? This is the title, the same title that we are actually getting. Awesome. So we can get the title, you can get the links. So inside of this you get all the links that are used on this page, right? You can open it, you can get all of the information. Then you have you can get the body, so you can say document.body. So you get the entire body of the page, basically all of that. Okay, then you can get the children, so document.children. Okay, so the children will give us an array of one child element of the document. Okay, and then if you want to get the children, you can see it's an array. It's got, and now if you want the first element, you can just say document dot children, and you know that we've learned that in array, if I want the item within the index, the first item, basically we just have to use the 0 index because array starts with the 0, so you can get that. Then you can get the child nodes as well. There you go. Okay. Now there are different methods that are available on the document. For example, if you want to grab hold of any particular ID, so let's check. Let's print document. And inside of the body, do I have an element with an ID? You can see that there is an element with an ID of page, right? So if I want to grab hold of that element, so there are different methods available. So if you remember from the previous episodes, we learned about that uh, if a function is defined inside of an object, it becomes its method. So document has different methods available, functions available. One of those are get element by ID. So if you want to grab hold of the element, you can call this function on this, and you just need to pass a parameter which would be the ID name. So the ID name was page. If you remember, if I hit it, you can see I can grab hold of that particular page element, right? Similarly, you can get hold of the elements by their tag names. So again, let's print the document. What do we have in the body? Let's say if I want to get the head. Okay, so I can get this element by its name, the tag name. So again, you have a method available on document called get element by tag name. Okay, and then again, it takes the parameter as the name of the tag. So I want the head, hit it. There you go, you get the head available. Okay. Now also you can get the element by the class name as well. So again, let's just print document. What do we have inside? Do we have any element with a class name? You can see the body has a class name of home. Or let's go deep down. Let's say I want to grab hold of the footer with its class name. So what do we do? Just say document dot get element by class name. Again, it accepts a parameter which is the class name. Okay, put that there, hit it, there you go. You've got the footer and it's got length 1, and that's the element it's able to grab, right? So if you're wondering where would you use all of these methods, well, let me tell you, these methods are like going to be super helpful when you are manipulating elements in the DOM. For example, if you want to click on a particular button, and if you want something to happen, you have to first grab hold of that element. So you know that each element in the DOM tree is an object. So you can grab hold of the elements with the help of the their ID or the class name or the tag name, all of the different methods that we spoke about. And then when you hold that element, you can then attach events, which we will discussing in the upcoming video. You can actually go ahead and attach events to them so that when that is clicked, and then whatever you want to do inside of that function, which is called when that event is triggered, which means when you click on the button, then you can perform that. You can alert something, you can send him somewhere else, or you can scroll down the page, you can animate, you can do all sort of things. Okay, so JavaScript is really, really powerful. Awesome. One of the most common ones that we use is document dot query selector. What query selector is going to ask you for is you can pass a class name or an ID name. So remember we had site footer, but because query selector is generic, which means you can either pass your class name or ID name, etc. You just need to differentiate between what it is by just putting dot over there. So for class name, you'll put dot, and if you hit enter, you see you've got the footer. Okay. Similarly, for document dot query selector, if you remember, we had something with an ID of page, right? Again, to differentiate what you want to select, if you want to select an ID, I will use hash. For class, we use dot. I hit it, there you go, you've got the page. So that's how you grab hold of different elements. So let's say I want to grab hold of this start learning button. What does it have? So it has got a class name, and it says button primary light. Um, So there could be many buttons which have got similar class names like button primary light. So how do I distinguish? What you can do is that grab hold of the parent element and then the child as well. So what I can do is, if I want to grab hold of that, I can say document dot query selector. So how you select in CSS, same way you can select it here as well. So the first thing will be its parent. You can go a little on top. So select this one. Always try to grab something unique if possible. If not, you can use classes. So this one. And then inside of this, I have this class, which is button primary light. So I'm going to use that space and then again dot and then just hit enter. There you go. If you hover over it, you can see that it is highlighting that element, which means that element has been selected and it's been triggered. Sorry, it's been selected, so you've got the hold of that particular element, and then you can do all sort of things with that element once you've got hold of it. Okay, awesome. So those are the DOM methods. Now you can also traverse in the DOM, which means that moving from node to its parent, children, or sibling nodes, which means that if I take an example of this, let's say, so you have parent, then you have child, then you have another child, and so on and so on. And again, you have grandchildren as well, which is this. So elements are nested inside of each other, and moving from a node to its parents, children, or sibling nodes is called DOM traversal, which means we are traversing either down the tree or up the tree, or we can also do sideways, which means that we can find siblings. So you can see that this element and this element is at the same level, so you can call that it's next to it. So it is sibling of this. Okay. Now, instead of showing this entire side, let me just go on to something that's more simple. So what I'm going to do is come over here in the index.html, just get rid of all of this. Just create another file and we can call it DOM. You can call it whatever you want. I'll call it dom.js because we are discussing that. And let's just include the script with the source of dom.js. Okay, let's put some content. Let's say we have a div with the class name of container. Inside of this, we can probably have another div. We can give it a class name of wrap. Then we can have a heading. And then let's just give it a class name of heading. And then we can have a paragraph tag. Let's give it a class name of para. Lorem ipsum. Okay, awesome. So we've got some elements to play with, and we've got our DOM file included, dom.js. Again, you can name this file whatever you want. And let's say I want to grab hold of the, let me just refresh here first. I want to grab hold of this heading. So if I click on this and select this heading, I do know that I can grab hold of this heading with the help of this class name, which is heading, right? Okay, so how do we do that? Well, all you have to do is come over here and say document.query selector. There are different ways of doing it. You can do it by class name as well, but this is also fine. Query selector and just put h1. So here we are not selecting by class name. You can see if you hover over it, this element is selected, right? Similarly, document.query selector. If I want to grab hold with the class, so grab hold of this element with the class name, you can just put dot because you need to tell what are you selecting, class or ID or what. So you can select it by the class name as well. We still get the same element, right? Okay, now if we take a look, its parent is this element, right? In the tree structure, in the parent-child relationship, its parent is the div element with the class name of wrap. So if I want to go ahead and access that, how do we do it? We just say document dot parent. Sorry, first, in fact, let's hold it inside of the um, a variable or constant, I would say. So I can say heading equals document dot query selector, and I would say heading, or I can also write h1, but that's fine. But if you have more elements on the page which are having the same tag name, I can imagine you won't have more than one h1 on a page for SEO purposes, but I'm talking about other elements. If you have multiple p tags, then it's best to use either a class name or ID name depending on what you're trying to achieve. So I've got the heading, and as you can see, if I hit it, I get the heading. Yep. And then if I want to grab hold of its parent, all I have to do is say heading dot parent element. There you go. I've got the parent element, and if you check it, you can see div with the class of wrap is actually its parent. What if I want to get the parent of wrap? Well, of course, the parent of wrap will be container. How do I get that? Well, say it's simple. Heading dot parent element, and there you go. You get the container. So you get the idea, right? We are traversing in the DOM. Currently, I would like to ask you a question. So do you think we are traversing up or down the tree? We'll take a moment and think. So we went from heading to wrap, wrap to container. So we are heading up the tree, right? So we are traversing from child to parent up the DOM, right? Okay, great. Similarly, what if you want the child element, right? So what I can do is that, again, I'll refresh the page and I'll say const, and then I will grab hold of this entire, let's say, container. Let's say this one. I'll say wrap element. So remember in JavaScript, it's the best practice to use the camel casing, which is the first letter small, and then every time you want to separate a word, separate it by beginning it with a capital letter like this. Okay, document dot query selector, and I want to grab it with the class. Hit it. So it's wrap element dot child children. So what children is going to do is going to give you all of the child elements. So you know that if you check the structure, the wrap has two elements. One is h1 and the second is the paragraph. So it's going to give you both. So as you can see, it's returned two elements. Length is 2. You've got the heading and you've got the paragraph. And notice that it's getting highlighted when I hover over it, right? So if you want to grab hold of the first element, well, you can do wrap element dot children, and since it's an array, you grab hold of the first item, which is 0 index, and there you go, you get the first item. Similarly, you can get the second item like this, right? Awesome. So we talked about the children, we talked about the parent. Let's talk about getting hold of the siblings, basically. Okay, so let's say that I have this heading and I want to get hold of the paragraph tag, which is the sibling of this next to it. So what I'll do is, first I refresh, I say const heading is equal to document dot, you guys tell me, yeah, query selector, and then I can do head h1 also because I don't have any other element with the name of h1. So I can say heading dot next element sibling. There you go, got that. So I can hold this paragraph into, again, a constant, and I can store this information here, which means now I have the paragraph as well. If I print it, if I console it, you can see I've got the paragraph. Now if I want to get hold of its sibling, which means the sibling of paragraph will be heading, I can grab that. So I'll hit like this, I'll say para, dot previous element sibling, and there you go, I get the heading. So if I'm on heading 1, if I want to grab the P, I would say next element sibling. If I'm on the P and I want to get the head one, H1, sorry, then I'll say previous element sibling. Okay. Similarly, there are different types of properties and methods that are available that you can use. You can check it out, and definitely that'll be really helpful. Now let's print the paragraph. So let's say, what if I want to have content inside of this paragraph? How do we do that? So we'll just say para dot text content, and there you go. You get the entire text inside of this. Brilliant. Awesome. Now JavaScript is really, really powerful. What you can also do is you can insert content inside of the element, and you can in fact change the entire content of an element as well. So let's say that this is my container, which is wrap. Currently I have heading and paragraph inside of it. I can actually change this entire value, just replace this whole thing with something else. And so JavaScript is really powerful. Let me show you how we can do that. So we have the wrap element. No, we don't. Okay, let's just create one. So wrap element document dot query selector, and I'm going to grab hold of the wrap element, which is basically the container of these two. Okay, dot, because I'm grabbing hold with the class name. Hit it, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create some content. I can say new content equals, and inside of string I can put a new heading, let's say h2, and I can say Cynthia, right? Okay, so I've got the new content. All I have to do is just take this content and put it inside of it. So basically what it's going to do is, what we want to achieve is that just get rid of this heading and P and just put that inside of the wrap. So how do we do that? Well, it's very simple. You'll say wrap element dot inner HTML equals new content. I'm not going to hit enter. Just notice what happens. Hit it. There you go. You can now see that we have, with the help of JavaScript, we actually changed the entire content. And that's what we spoke about into our slides, that with the help of JavaScript, JavaScript can actually manipulate the content on the DOM, right? So JavaScript can actually get hold of the element. So in our case, we got hold of the element with the class name of wrap, and whatever was there inside of it, we replaced that with a new content. So JavaScript can interact with the DOM and do a lot of things, change, update, manipulate, too many things that you can do. So that's, you get the idea, right? So what is achievable with JavaScript is definitely something to be really amazed to know about, right? Okay, awesome. Now, what if you had to put multiple, what if you had to put more content inside of it? How do you do that? So what we're going to do is, so I'm going to refresh it again so that you get hang of, grabbing holding of the element. Let's say I'm going to create some content like new content equals, and first I take div, and I will say, yep, just opening of div, and then I can say new content plus equals h2 hello. Again, I can say new content plus equals. So you can see it's adding the content to it using the plus equal to sign. And then I'm going to put a paragraph tag over here and put lorem. And I could write everything in one go, but I can also do it this way. Later on, when you learn about ES6, you would know that We can simplify this as well. If you're learning React with the help of JSX, you wouldn't have to worry about just adding this plus sign, etc. Makes the life a lot easier. Okay, and finally we need to put a closing tag. So new content plus equals div. Okay, so finally we have this content. So we have a div inside of which we have a heading tag with some text, and then we have paragraph tag. What if I want to replace this entire thing with this? So you can tell me what we can do. The first thing is grab hold of this, the wrapper of this, which is this element right here. So we'll grab hold with the help of the class name. So wrap element equals document dot query selector, and I'm going to grab hold with the help of wrap, and then I'm just going to say wrap element dot inner HTML equals the new content, and watch what happens. If I hit enter, it's going to replace the entire content, which is the heading and the paragraph, with the new one. Hit it, there you go. You've got hello with lorem and all of that stuff. Check here. You can see you've got div, you've got hello, you've got lorem. Isn't that amazing? Well, let's give it a round of applause for us. Just pat our back. Awesome. Great. Now there's so many properties available: first child, last child, first element. So many things are available. You can check it out. But there are a few cool ones that we go ahead and use. I'm just going to share that with you. So let's say that I'm going to refresh it. Let's say I want to grab hold of I want to know what is the class name for this particular element. Okay. Or let's say this one, the heading tag. So how do we do that? So I will say const heading equals document dot query selector. I'm gonna grab hold of the h1, assuming there are no other heading tags on the page. Heading dot. So these are basically attributes. As you already know about HTML, these are attributes. So I have class which is heading, so it's an attribute. If I want to get hold of it, I can actually say get attribute, and I can say class. You can see you've got heading, right? You also have something called set attribute. So you can actually set attribute. Set attribute class. It takes second parameter as whatever value you want to set. So currently you can see the class name is heading. We can change that to something else like new heading. Hit enter, and there you go. You can see now the class name is automatically changed. Can you see how powerful JavaScript is? You can actually manipulate things, right? So generally, you might be wondering, when do we do this? Well, we generally do it, for example, if I want to hide or show an element, if I can add a class name. Let me give you an example, okay? So we have a style.css. Let's say that we have a class called hide, and we give it a property of display none to this. Okay, so all we're doing is just putting a value, putting a class name hide, and then adding its value to display none. Or in fact, we can, yeah, that's fine. So what we can do is that refresh first of all, const heading equals document dot query selector h1. Now besides attribute, besides using the method called set attributes and get attributes, you can also get the value of the class name using class list. Okay, so it's heading dot class list dot value equals heading, right? Okay, so if you want to set its value to something else, you can do that. So you can say class list dot value equals, you can set it to like hide. And what do you expect to happen? Well, because we are manipulating the class name, the current value of the class name is heading. But if you change that to hide, we know that in our JavaScript we had put the style as for hide, it'll be display none, which means it shouldn't be shown. Okay, we need to also link that style, link style.css. Okay, great. So first thing we'll do is we'll get hold of the heading element. We'll say document.query selector h1. And what we want to achieve, basically, we want to go ahead and change the class name. So there's another way to do it besides set attributes and get attributes, get attributes and set attributes. You can say heading.classlist. What do we have available? Value. We have a value available. So what is the current value? It's heading, right? What if I go ahead and set the value to hide? What do you think will happen? Well, because we're manipulating the class name, we're changing from heading to hide. We know that on hide class name, we have set up a property of display none, which means we're expecting that the heading element should be hidden when we set this value. Let's hit it and see. There you go. You can see now it's hidden. Although the element still remains, but we are not removing that element. There are ways to remove the element from the DOM as well, but we are simply hiding it because now there is a class called hide applied to it, and you can see that it's been hidden. If I remove this, you can see it's back again. What if I want to completely remove the element? Well, of course you can do that. You can say, the first I'm going to set this class name value back to what it was before. You can choose not to set it as well, it's completely fine. Now we can say heading dot remove. Now this element will be completely removed from the DOM. Hit enter and there you go. You can see that now that heading tag no longer exists. In fact, you will be surprised to know I can get rid of the entire content from the body. I can just say document dot query selector body, and I can say dot remove, and you can see the entire body is gone. Can you see how powerful JavaScript is? You can make the entire site crash by just removing the whole thing with your JavaScript. So definitely it's extremely powerful. Awesome. You can also add a class name. You can remove the class name. So if I grab hold of this element, let's say const heading equals document dot. By this time, I'm sure you're pretty much comfortable with document dot query selector to grab hold of the elements. And this is the class name. What if I want to add a class name? So I can say heading dot class list dot add. I can add a new class name like class 1. Hit it, and there you go. Class 1 is added. What if I want to add one more? I can add one more. There you go. You can see class 2 has been added. Now if you want to remove a class, I can do, instead of add, I can do remove, and there you go. Class 2 has been removed. Isn't that amazing? What if I want to toggle the class, which means toggle means that if it has the class, remove it. If it doesn't, then add it. So that is quite useful when you want to show and hide an element. So let's say that I would say heading dot class list dot toggle hide, right? What this would do is that if you hit enter once, it's going to, if the class name exists, if the class name doesn't exist, it's going to add that. If it does exist, it's going to remove it. So what do you expect to happen? So currently I don't have that class name available, so it's going to add that. Hit it, there you go. It's hidden, right? Because you have got the class hide applied and it displays none, right? If you hit it again, because it's going to check if the class name is present. If it is present, remove it. Hit it again, back again. Now you can actually play with it. Notice what happens here on the right hand side. Just notice what happens over here, right? Hit it. You can see it's gone. Again, hit it, it's back again. Hit. So in future, in the real world scenarios, probably you may want to put a button which makes it disappear on the click of an event. You handle that feature to be added. So the different scenarios, different use cases that you can use it for, but you get the idea that you're getting the hang of what JavaScript can actually do. Okay, perfect. Okay, so in the next episode, what we're going to learn about is about events. But just before we jump onto that, I just want to show you one more thing about the attributes. You can actually add your own attributes to elements as well. So let's say that you can say data ID equals 1. And you tell me, how do I grab hold of that? Well, it's pretty simple. Just get that element first. So I can say const heading equals document dot query selector h1 and heading dot get attribute. What do I want to grab? Data ID. You can see it's 1. So we've got that information. What if I want to add an attribute? So you can say heading dot set attribute. I want to add another one. Let's say I want to say data name, and is going to take another value, whatever value you want to set it to. So this is the property name, property value. So value will be, name will be, let's say Cindy. Hit it, and there you go. You've got data name Cindy that's been added over here. Isn't that brilliant? Awesome. Great. So this is something that you're going to need that in real world scenario when you're dealing with some dynamic data from the database. If you're supposed to loop through different elements, you may want to store their IDs in these kind of attributes because with the help of IDs you'll be able to actually print the required data for example for that particular post, etc. So it will be clear to you in the real world scenarios, but just to let you know that these things exist. I think we've got very well knowledge, enough knowledge I would say, for us to start building some applications. So what we're going to do in the next video, when we jump onto events, we will be doing some real coding as well. All of this while we've been doing that inside of the console, because it's pretty easy to see what's goes on over here, but we're going to definitely do that inside of our files as well. We just have to copy paste the code, nothing more. Okay, great. So I hope you did like the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up. All of this code is going to be available, all of the videos of this will be available to you on the coditech.com. You can go to courses, the different courses available. You could go to JavaScript, and then you click on the JavaScript basics for beginners to advanced, and this is where you will get the list of the tutorials that are going to come in the same series. Okay, great. So you can check this out. You can subscribe to my channel if you did like the video, and you can add a review as well. And please, you can check the GitHub repository as well, and please follow me on GitHub as well. And you can star my repository as well for your support. Okay, and you can come over here at imranhsayed, and you can follow me here. Okay, you can also follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Twitter imranhsayed, same one as GitHub. All right, so that's brilliant then. I hope you did like the video. I'm going to see you in the next video when we discuss the events. Take care. Bye-bye.